Hello, and welcome to the English with Colin Podcast, a podcast for English language learners. My name's Colin, I'm an English teacher in Tokyo, and if you're looking to improve your English skills and gain more confidence in your ability to communicate in English, you've come to the right place. In these episodes, I'll provide you with short conversations in English that cover a range of topics, from everyday situations to more specialised subjects. These conversations are designed to help you practice your listening skills and pick up new vocabulary and grammar along the way. Regular listening practice is key to improving your English, and I hope this podcast will become a valuable resource for you on your language learning journey. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation. And remember, the more you listen, the more you'll learn. Before we start, I have a small favour to ask. If you are enjoying these podcasts, please take a moment to share your favourite episode with a friend. This really helps our podcast to grow. So, in your podcast app, click share and send a short message to a friend who might find our podcast useful. Thank you so much for your help. It really means a lot to us. Now, let's get on with the conversation. This is episode 34, and today's topic is culture shock, navigating the unknown in Japan. Hello, Sue.
Hey.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well. So culture shock, whenever you go from one culture to another, there are changes, differences, that can be a bit of a struggle. And I think for people coming to Japan, culture shock can be quite a big thing. I think if you go from one European country to another, you might get some culture shock, but it's not going to be huge, right? Yeah. If you go from France to Germany, for example, or Italy to Spain, it's not going to be huge jump. But for us, obviously you from Mexico, me from Scotland, coming to Japan, there are differences, fundamental kind of differences. Maybe people coming from China to Japan or Korea to Japan or, Thailand or whatever, maybe they feel less culture shock. But anyway, culture shock is our topic for today. Let's start with the basics. What about the language? What was your Japanese knowledge coming to Japan?
None. So I think one thing that, I was surprised I didn't really, never thought about it, was the different ways of talking. There's different language even when you have, when you talk to your peers, when you talk to people you know very well. And obviously the slang that I think that could have been expected. Mm-hmm. But if you talk to a superior or if you talk in a more kind of formal situation, there's other words. Mm-hmm. It's not just formality. It's not necessarily adding a little bit of this or that. It's a complete different language.
Yeah, I mean, this gets into something I was going to talk about later, but hierarchy, mm-hmm. levels within society. So that hierarchy is built into the language. Mm-hmm. You can be very clear about your position compared to somebody else by the language that you're using, and you will be expected to use certain language with somebody who is superior to you. I had a friend who was over here studying at university, studying Japanese. And obviously, day to day, she was speaking with her peers, with her classmates. So her Japanese was very casual, because that's how young people talk to each other. But every few weeks, or maybe once a semester, I'm not sure, she had to talk to her professor. She would have a meeting, a one-to-one meeting with her professor about how her studies were going. And she spoke with casual Japanese to him, and he told her, like, don't talk to me like that. You don't use that language with me. In fact, I think it was, instead of saying yes, she said, right? That was a kind of noise. And that's perfectly acceptable in casual conversation. But she should have said yes.
I understand.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't like that at all. So, and even the use of things like san, sama, or even chan and kun, you know, all of these, depending on the level. So san would be the standard one, sama is more superior, and then chan is to a child or a woman, a girl, kun maybe to a little boy. But I mean, I've, you know, working at university, I've heard professors, male professors, call other male professors kun, which is, you know, what you would call a small boy, because they are more senior. So they are allowed to use this. I think it's become a little less common, but it's certainly used. It's kind of like, I'm up here, you're down there. Let's be very clear about this.
It's also by age, right?
Age is important, yeah.
Age is important, but from very young. There was this a show we watched, what was it called? A house that, you know, they come in to find love.
Oh, Terrace House?
Terrace House.
Terrace House, yes.
And we watched one season. But one thing that called my attention was when they start meeting, one of the first questions they ask each other is, how old are you?
Yeah, that's true.
Because they don't know each other.
Yeah.
But that's a good measure of, okay, am I above or below you?
Yeah, so this idea of senpai and kohai. So your senpai is superior or older to you, more experienced. So in a school situation, somebody from a year above you, and then kohai is the opposite, somebody younger than you. Or, you know, in a work situation, somebody who's been at the company longer than you. And they're usually going to be older as well. So yeah, that's right. Even in that sort of TV show, the first thing they wanted to know is, how old are you? So, okay. So hierarchy, formality through hierarchy. Back to language. How much of a barrier is the language?
I think for everyday things, you get the language very quickly because it's repetitive, right? But it's the things that are not so common that are a little bit difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating for me going to the city office because I don't have to go to the city office very often. But when I go there, I usually have to do something kind of technical, usually some form, usually a very important form. And it's not Japanese that I'm familiar with. And I can only prepare so much. And then, yeah, just, you know, filling out forms in Japanese is one of my least favorite things to do.
I think in your own language, it's difficult.
True. I mean, I look around at other people there, other, you know, Japanese people at the city office, and they don't want to be there. Nobody wants to go there. No one's having a good time at the city office. But yeah, so that's true. I mean, I think even for Japanese speakers, these forms can be a bit of a headache. So yeah, I think you're right. I think everyday situations you learn quickly. You learn what you need to know. You know, you learn how to do stuff at the post office, or you learn how to order food in a restaurant or buy a train ticket or whatever. And then yeah, it's repeated exposure to certain things. Reading is a challenge. Reading's always a challenge. Even when you think you're doing really great, there'll be some, Chinese character that you've never seen before, and then that's it. Suddenly you just can't understand anything. Yeah. Okay, what other aspects of culture? What about bowing?
Bowing is important, and how you bow.
Right.
I think also it has a lot of communication to it. I think when you pointed out, and I've never really noticed, when a politician or someone that is in a very high position makes a mistake, important mistake, you can see them on television.
There's a press conference.
There's a press conference, and then there's a very specific bow of apology.
Yeah.
It's a very formal, it's
deep.
It's very deep bow. And I never really thought about it, but once you mentioned it, it's like, okay, yes.
Yeah, anyone who's done something they shouldn't have done. So it could be a politician, a businessman, some celebrity who's done something they shouldn't have done. They'll get in front, and you'll see as they're bowing, the cameras, all the cameras are going, all of the cameras are flashing. And bowing in day-to-day life, because I'm from the UK, we shake hands. It's a big part of, being a friendly person in the UK is shaking hands. In Mexico, shaking hands, hugging, kissing. So you come to Japan and suddenly that's gone.
Absolutely.
You don't hug people here.
No. You don't come near them.
And even eye contact. I mean, seriously. Bowing took a little bit of getting used to, and knowing how to bow. Yeah. Because you shouldn't look at the person as you're bowing. Part of bowing is that you don't have eye contact with the person to show kind of respect.
There's the bowing when people say goodbye or thank you for buying something, or there's some sort of transaction which is not too formal, and there's the kind of 5 minutes of bowing and a little step back. And
well, the thing is, one of the things I find quite annoying is busy train stations. When you're trying to get, run for your train, and then there's people at the ticket gates saying goodbye to friends who are getting on the train, and they're just slowly sort of bowing and taking a step back and bowing. So they're just walking blindly backwards.
I guess it's rude just to say bye and leave.
Indeed, yeah, you got to be there until they leave. Okay. What else can we talk about here? The group is very important. Being in or out of the group, and group harmony is very important. When I came here, I worked at a school. I was working at a junior high school, and that is your work group. You came here, you were a PhD student.
Yeah, it was very lonely.
So what I'm trying to say is that you were not part of a group directly.
No.
Because PhDs are individual study. It's you and your professor. But working at the school, you're part of that group, and it's very, very clear. And socializing with the group members is important, and trying to maintain good relationships with the group and keep that harmony. So one thing I found was I would have, I would come up with a plan for a lesson that I wanted to teach with my colleague, and I would show my colleague, this is my plan. And, I was a new teacher. My lesson plans were probably very bad. And the teacher would not directly tell me, no, this is bad, we can't use this, or, you know, you need to change this. They would just kind of try, they wouldn't say no, they wouldn't say it was bad, they just wouldn't say it was good.
Mm-hmm.
And what you should, or what I should have understood there is that, okay, it's not good enough. They're just being polite. They don't want to tell me directly that this is bad. They're just, the way that they're telling me is by kind of like, well, you know, and I found that quite frustrating initially because I wanted feedback.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know, okay, right, well, what should I change? What's not good enough? What, you know, then I can change it. But if you just go, then I don't know what to change. It was very difficult for me to move forward. But I think that's part of the harmony, is kind of understanding what is not being said.
As much as what is being said, yes.
Yeah. So
that's important.
We're used to communication being very direct, whereas in Japan, it's indirect or unspoken things. We have the phrase kind of reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
In Japanese, they talk about reading the air,
mm-hmm.
The kuki. So it's reading the air, and some people are good at that, and some people aren't. And when you first arrive in Japan, you can't read the air. You can't. But over time, you start to understand. Okay, yeah, no, this isn't good enough. This needs to be fixed, or whatever. So yeah, that aspect of kind of trying to work with people, but the communication is very indirect, was kind of frustrating as well. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. This seems like it's a topic that we can come back to again in the future. There's a few more things I would like to talk about, but I think we'll leave it there for today. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the English with Colin podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation and found it helpful in your language learning journey. Remember, the key to mastering a language is regular practice. So make sure you listen to our podcast regularly and keep honing your listening skills. We appreciate your support and feedback. So if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future topics, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to joining you again next time for another conversation in English. Until then, keep practicing and take care.